All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome to our LinkedIn Live. This time, navigating omnichannel in MedTech beyond theory. This is already the third time that we are dedicating an hour on the concept of the omnichannel in MedTech. And the reason is because we are seeing that the topic is interesting, is gaining a lot of momentum, is dominating many of the healthcare conversations. But at the same time, we are seeing that it's not still fully implemented, or let's say is implemented only by a few companies. And after the first two sessions, we had the first session with Marco Beguini, in which we described a little bit the theory, and then a second session in which community team explained their very limited experience, small examples of omnichannel. A lot of people ask me to have some real examples, and so this time we've asked two experts, or let's say two professionals that have experienced significant omni-channel projects, and they're here with me today. You can see them. Mike, do you want to introduce first, and then we'll go to Wasim?
Sure. So thanks very much for having me, for a start, we should say. I'm Michael Kolintak. I'm a founder of Agency Medical Marketing, and been in healthcare now for 20 years, my entire adult career. And I've had that experience across 5 continents, across sales, marketing, and in the recent few years, sort of 5 to 6 more into the comms side of things. So hopefully I understand both sides of the fence. I've worked client side, I've run campaigns there, and I've come over to the agency side now because I think there's a better way of doing things.
Excellent. Wasim?
Hi, everyone. My name is Wasim Kawaf. I've also worked in healthcare for many years, both on the client side and on the agency side. When we were getting started in healthcare on the digital side many years ago, it was really how to translate brochure websites into digital experiences that drove revenue, and then that evolved into how do we drive real voice of customer, real efficiencies, real ROI, real progress that impacts the bottom line and improves the consumer and patient experience. I run a company that I run with my co-founder called Secho Syndicate out here in the U.S., but I've also worked across 30 different global markets, and I'm excited to share some tips and tricks with you today.
Excellent. So for the attendees, the usual homework, or let's say brief information. This time we're streaming from multiple areas, so it's very difficult to understand how many attendees we have and from where they're calling. So if you want to briefly add in your comment section, in the comment section, where you're logging in from, it would be highly appreciated. This will give us a little bit of a flavor from where most of the people is logging in, and also will help you to familiarize with this, with the chat box. The chat box will be used in the second phase. So as usual, we'll have a first phase in which Michael and Wasim will talk about their experience and will present their stories, and in this case, real case studies. And then the second half of the live will be dedicated to questions. So you will use this comment box for those questions. After this very preliminary intro, I have a question for you both. And the question is, it's something that is simmering in our industry. Despite the clear benefits that we have seen elsewhere in most of the industry, digital selling and omni-channel approach remains in very underutilized in MedTech. a lot of people is saying because we are a conservative business, but I think that COVID has clarified that we can easily communicate digitally, and that healthcare professionals are on the digital medias. So why do you think we are so slow in our industry to implement digital selling strategies? Wasim, if you want to start first.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're making some really important points, Elvio. First of all, I think COVID really changed the acceleration curve on digital and why omnichannel and MedTech as a whole. But now the expectations have really moved to any channel, anytime, at the patient or at the consumer or at the HCP level's preference, right? And so the paradigms have really been built for internal workflows. What works best internally as opposed to what works best externally. And to kind of break through that inertia is no small task, because a lot of these healthcare organizations have been around for decades. And we've been doing it this way for a long time. And this is what works, and this is what's proven, and this is what's already de-risked, right? So getting that idea of how do we start small? How do we get easy wins to kind of begin to show the value in the concept? And how do we build on top of that? A lot of times that's not about the technology. It's about how do we move the people and process to embrace that mentality of testing and learning, right? Which is not a given in this space. And we're only starting to see that shift. But now we have the added complexity of, okay, how do we do it in the time of GDPR, with HIPAA compliance end to end, with AI and its regulations and the things around it, right? And so, it's not from a lack of ideation on the team side, but it's how do we create that safe environment that we can test, that we can learn from, that we can show impact from, and how do we start to build on that? And I don't think that that's built into the DNA yet. So it's how do you start to kind of simplify that to allow that to, how do you allow the levee to kind of break so you can start to see some of that value that comes downstream?
Okay, and Mike, I would ask you the same question with a small addition to it. That is, do you think that omni-channel approaches and strategies are starting to deliver results?
It's a cracking question. I think the basis is that most of the companies that I have worked for and work with now are still sales-led organizations, and I think most of that's particularly in med tech and med devices. Pharma have evolved slightly beyond this, but I think mainly they focus on a strategy of thought leadership. And that's an important thing to understand, because thought leadership in general is product focused, and they're very good at training reps. They're very good at projecting that thought leadership into the market. But I think when you're looking at omnichannel strategies, you're looking at being audience centric, customer centric, and you're having to construct processes which follow a customer journey and take them through a process to an end destination. And I think that's very different for organizations which are sales led, which are generally on broadcast mode, to start assimilating information about the customer, taking those data points and recycling them into refining that strategy. My feeling is that probably there's a bit of a skill gap within the industry at the moment, and then that most marketers that I know have come from sales, whereas what we're talking about here is comms, and that's a very, very separate and different discipline. And the two are going to have to start meeting in the middle, because you've got comms people and sales people to forge something akin to a sales and marketing alignment. And that's what I think at the moment, that's where the gap exists. Is omni-channel strictly necessary? It's one of many strategies. And I started this by talking about thought leadership as one. Single channel, being sales-led, is a strategy, and it is successful in some cases. Multi-channel is probably a more common concept that most people are talking about now. I think omni-channel is seen as like the destination, and it's applicable in some circumstances and the right one. But it doesn't necessarily have to be the endpoint that people get to. And they just certainly need to go on the journey before they can deploy it, because you're not going to deploy it on day one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, just
Okay.
adding on to Michael's point with one quick
Please. Yeah.
thing, a lot of times it's been the hero's tale, right? And so sales, it's this thing where you're going after the champion surgeon or the head of procurement or so forth, right? And what you see today is an average of 11, 12 people involved in that selling process. So a lot of the med tech, a lot of pharma, you're focused on one buyer as opposed to the 12 that will require the influence in the sales. So again, the connection with the sales team is very pertinent, and it's pertinent more than ever because they're not selling to one person; they're selling to 12 or 15 or 20, right? And so, in order for you to really deliver the message, it's got to be at the right time with the right intent in the right spot. We've done a lot of training with sales teams in Sales Navigator, where it's really an account-based approach where you're looking and you're seeing those intent signals and you're seeing those activation signals. And to Michael's point, you've trained the sales teams with the narratives that they should be speaking to, and they should be selling with, they should be looking at, and they should be training with, right? But, I'll say somewhat controversially, the omni-channel is table stakes in order to really run through it. And it's actually a lot easier than what companies are running today, because right now, a lot of it is coming inside out, right? So we determine a launch, we determine the goals, we determine the KPIs, we determine the messaging. We've done some interviews, but they're all internal, right?
Yeah.
What we're not doing is we're not taking a lot of those external touch points, that voice of customer that sits in our call centers, that sits in our research, that sits in our website, that sits in all of these digital channels, and say, actually, this is what the HCP is looking for. These are the core areas that we're missing, right? We're not creating that breathing, living organism, which is how omni-channel thrives, right? So you're not going to get that from 0 to 100 overnight, but that idea of starting to shift that narrative from internal out to external in, because if you look external in, your ROI is going to be way larger than if you assume, right?
I think the utilization of thought leadership is straightforward when you're doing outbound to clinicians, because clinicians, by their very nature, want to learn about new philosophies because of ethical reasons, because of business reasons. It's in their employment that they need to do so, and because of patient reasons, right? They want to make sure they're giving the best treatments to their patients. Okay, so to me, I think it was a simple strategy that worked years ago. What's changed now is value assessment committees are now made up of, as you rightly say, Wazim, 9, 10 other people. And they all require a different value proposition. And they're often not interested in the thought leadership strategy that you've utilized to engage the clinician. They have their own reasons. They want to hear about real world evidence. They want to hear about what you're going to do for them, their hospital. It's beyond the procedure, and it's more into what are you going to do for our team and what are you going to do for this center. I think that's maybe where there's some friction at the moment that's occurring between the old, who said it's worked this way for years, why are we changing? And the new, who are saying, well, that thought leadership strategy maybe is a part of the wider strategy, but it has to be other ones employed right now.
Right.
Let me summarize what you guys are saying, because you're saying basically two things in my mind, if I understood correctly. One is that this hybrid approach, let's not call it omni-channel, because as we said, could be single channel, multi-channel, omni-channel, whatever. But let's say hybrid digital approach is used for two main reasons. The first one is to listen more to the different shareholders and therefore develop the narrative based on the information that you're receiving from external instead of from internal. And the second one is to talk better to the multiple stakeholders of the sales process. Is that correct?
I think it's also understanding the pain points way better, right? And so, Nico's point, let's take a typical medtech or biotech company, and you start your year out, you're going to launch 3 or 4 products or 2 products. Your focus is only on those 2 products, right? That's where your messaging is. You're talking to the clinician, you're talking to those areas. there's so much that you are blindsided with because you haven't opened up that aperture to take in the feedback to allow you to market better, right? And so that's a huge miss, because it's as easy in a lot of cases as actually just listening to the customer across those channels, seeing what they've written. So allowing them the ability to actually put in open text feedback for you, right? So you can actually understand what the intent is, right? This gets to be, I mean, especially if you're talking larger scale where you already have customers, understand where their pain point is, and you can understand that digitally without surveying them, without going through there, but just simply asking the question, getting the response, and then modifying the content and the experience to match that response, right? I mean, to Michael's point, when you're talking you're talking to the doctor, the surgeon, sometimes the nurse, but you're really like, very few companies are talking to the administrators. Very few companies are talking to the CFOs. Very few websites, very few email nurturers are targeted to the C-level that are really thinking through what are those narratives that actually work. How do we allow them to self-serve? Because I think, Elvio, that's the $1 million piece that gets missed. Is today you can self-serve much more effectively than you ever have in time, right? Because similar to humans have a very finite attention span, and we have competing resources for that time. So how are you allowing that person to be scrolling at 11 o'clock at night, get the information they need or deliver the feedback they need to allow you to sell better, to deliver better, to service better, right? I think those are pieces that are critical that often just get lost because we're very internally focused on delivering the product launch, delivering to KPIs. The primary KPI should be, what are we learning and how are we applying that into our experiences to be more effective and create a better customer experience and a better selling experience across the board.
Now, that's excellent. And let's get immediately into the point. And Mike, I would turn it to you. You work hands-on with companies in advanced selling strategies. And could you walk us through some of the examples so that we can start to let's say to bring all this narrative into practical points that are, at the end of the day, the pain points of the industry professionals that are thinking if they could or they should introduce a different approach to the sales process.
Yeah, sure. So I think what Razim's saying is great. I think we're getting to somewhere good here, which is that essentially, rather than utilizing the term omnichannel, I think what we're talking about is getting data back from the market, analyzing that data and adapting our approach in accordance with that. And that is certainly something that online gives us differently to that in-person experience. And I know a lot of reps who fed back, they put the information in the CRM, but very little is ever done with it. The benefit of having the digital feedback is, in general, we utilize it to refine the approach. So I think that's a good starting point. I think we need to just focus initially on how do we start this process, because when I talk about thought leadership, it's very much on a broadcast mode. And that's important to understand, because what we really need to do to be online is to move to problem solving. And the reason that we need to be able to do that is because I can't launch ads that are 3 pages long. We have to be able to focus very clearly on what the problem that we're talking about is, to get engagement and to get people onto our website in the first place. Ideally, we would move beyond that and move into customer centricity, which moves beyond you have this problem into, I know what your day looks like, and this is how we're going to make it better. This is how we make your story of your day look good because of the service or product that we offer. And that's the starting point of all of this. And we call that creative. I've heard that word used for lots of different things on this side of the industry, but really it's creative ways of getting your ideal customer profile. So that perfect customer, if you were going to put 10 of them in front of you and they were all going to buy your products, what would they look like? We get them to identify with us and engage with us. And we do that by accessing them and putting clever messaging in front of them and guiding them down a customer journey, which enables them to trust us. It's very difficult to take anything online until we've done this, because otherwise we're shouting to a very wide audience. We really want to be targeting a very narrow one. Then we've got to create content which speaks to them. And then we need to make sure we're utilizing the right channels where they are, meeting them where they are, to engage with them. And I think that's really where this strategic piece comes in, and where I think the friction exists in this market is a lot of people aren't doing that. I think what they are doing is creating content and then working out how they can deploy it online, maybe on the website, maybe on LinkedIn. And I think they're missing that initial piece at the beginning, which is who's our audience, what do they need to hear, and where can we target them? Does that answer your question over here?
Yeah, no, it does. It does. Can you explain a little bit the concept of the self-serve that Wasim was bringing before?
Yeah,
how this
absolutely.
apply to your concepts?
Yeah, so let's try and use some examples in the way, because I know that's what you want to talk about. I think lots of companies have a really good sales process. They have a really good, usually they've got a CRM that they're utilizing. Whether that's good or not is questionable, but they also have really good training. So the mid part of the commercial process, they're doing well. The pre part of this is what we call demand generation. It's what happens when your sales force go to speak to someone and they've been pre-educated on the product, either by finding information about you online or by being served it directly in some way or form, which generally should bring a more educated conversation. And I think the self-serve element of that is, if I'm going to speak to someone, I've probably done several things before they've come to my appointment, to an appointment with me. I've probably gone on their LinkedIn. I've probably gone on their website. I've had a look at what they're about, and I understand a bit more about them. I think the same thing can happen when you have a product or a service. You can either send that deliberately to your prospect in advance, or you can drop some breadcrumbs and allow them to find it, or hopefully the dream is for them to find you. I think that's the element of self-serve which has changed. And just to speak to this, we didn't need this when we were just using thought leadership to speak to clinicians. What's changed is this addition of multiple stakeholders, these value assessment committees, who've all got different needs. They're looking at your online presence to find what they want. And they don't care if your product has a 0.0001 difference in a clinical paper. What they care about is seeing what you've done for similar centers or similar people like them to help out their teams, to help out their hospital. And that's what we call real world evidence. I think that really is where Omnichannel does come into its own, because I'm not sure we understand those people very well. I'm not sure we understand their buyers and their drivers that well in this industry. We haven't been dealing with them for 50, 60, 70 years. I think what we are looking to do now is to understand them better. And that's where Wasim's completely on the money here, is that Omnichannel gets us that feedback about what they're thinking, about what we're saying, and what their pain points are and what their needs are. And that's powerful.
Okay. But do you have some practical examples that you run or you support in your experience?
Sure. So if we just jump onto, I've got a few slides here. They're detailed and people can request these from me afterwards, but they should show a journey as to how you can get the different strategies available. Most people will recognize single channel, which essentially is supporting your sales team. Could be a telesales team, could be an in-person team. And you'll see on the left-hand side, general activities that you do to promote things to them. So email and generally email announcements, education, we're doing that on a daily basis. And then generally training events and training courses that you might have. In the middle, sometimes you might invite those team in to do a training with you, particularly for a product launch or an update with new starters. You'll give them educational content. And then you can see on the right-hand side, they go out into the field. Ideally, on that right-hand column, you should be measuring the success of this training, looking at the engagement with it, looking at who's downloaded what. But at the end of this, you should have people who are educated in the field broadcasting your message. And ideally, you should be getting some feedback from them. If we go on to the next slide, this is the next progression of it. This was a company that we worked with, a pharma one, who had pre-filled syringes. And they wanted to broadcast their message to a very set audience. So we created some advertorial, some online ads, and a basic landing page website, which helps their sales force guide their prospects to more information about the product. That was upcoming events as a call to action. It was also some downloading of some materials. And in general, that didn't go out to a huge amount of people. We had a very small amount of people on that site, but the engagement with it was good. that's kind of a next step up from being sales led, I think, and a good step into multi-channel. If we go on to another slide here, this is a product launch, which was maybe a little bit more detailed. This had more online activities taking place, which drove to a full website, which had a lot of educational materials to download about a sublingual pain medication. And the idea of this was to accelerate the product launch, accelerate the growth curve, and to do that in combination with the sales force. So we'd gather the leads online and then field them into the sales force, and then they would go and see the prospect. So that was the idea of creating demands before they did. So they could have a more educated conversation with someone who might have been on the website, may have expressed some interest. And again, the numbers on this website were just under 1,000. So you're not talking about people coming on your website and hundreds of people flocking every day. I think that's a common misconception in this. It's about targeting a very small group of people in your total addressable market, and ideally your segmented market. But you're looking to pre-feed them with information before they have the sales call. That campaign evolved slightly, and Salesforce was linked into the website. Conversion tracking was linked in. Now, what that means is that Salesforce was able to assimilate information from the website, was able to directly plug it into some of the prospects when they'd enter their email address and tell the sales rep, this person has requested a brochure, downloaded something, or has requested a meeting with you. And I think that moves us more towards what we think of as omnichannel, because you're getting signals that are triggering events. And that event that I'm talking about there was the CRM being populated with data, which notified the rep to say, this person's requested a meeting with you. When I talk about omnichannel, an example here is about patient marketing. I just want to sort of put a pin where people say, oh, that's about patients. Actually, it's not. The target for this was the clinic managers and clinicians. We ran patient marketing advertising, and with the results of that, we collected patient leads. And then the aim here was to share those leads with the clinics. So the form online had anonymized data, the patients would fill in information, and that information would go straight to the clinic, who would then get in touch with them. What we needed to do was to speak with the clinics to find out what happened to the patient in the end, because I can't re-inform the strategy for the campaign without that intelligence being present. So what we looked to do was to then speak to each clinic to find out, give them the time and the date of the inquiry and the channel that it came from. So it could be that the patient asked for a phone call with them, which we could track. It could be they sent a form which was direct to the clinic. And then we asked them to fill out some details about what happened to that patient. Now, within that's a set of signals and triggers that enabled us to start interacting across different channels. The lead from the patient generated an email that went out to the clinic. And that email that went out to the clinic was also directed towards the sales team. So the sales team could follow up on it as well. Now, with the information that came back, we could re-inform our targeting strategy for our advertising to look at what was working and what wasn't working. And that's where I think the value comes in thinking about omnichannel over multi-channel. It's that data and what we get back and what we do with it and how we use it as feedback loops to re-inform clever thinking. Is that enough examples, Elvo? Or do you want?
No, I have. I think these are very, very clear examples. Let me clarify. So in the first case, you were addressing your strategy to healthcare professionals, while in the second, it was directly to patients. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think the reason I like this strategy is because of the misdirection, right? All of these have an audience of healthcare professionals, right? Because the patient marketing is about delivering added value on top of the products that you sell. So the idea is that it goes into the clinic, and then not only do you drop a product into them, you also help them signpost awareness of the availability of the treatment to people in the vicinity of the clinic. And the clinic manager is an important stakeholder within this. And what you want to be doing is demonstrating to them, look, this is what we've done for you this month. And that also creates this cycle of them feeding back data to you, which makes your campaign more efficient over time. And then essentially you then go out to market to say, look, we've actually got a campaign strategy here, which is well honed over several years and can give some excellent results. Because I think that's really the crux here. I think what we're talking about is this isn't a 6-month trial. It's not let's have a go at this. This needs to be a revolution of your commercial thinking to incorporate digital activities or online activities. And I think you have to commit towards that for 2 or 3 years to get it right. If you're trying, let's have a go, you'll end up in a situation where continually you're frustrated with it didn't work or we didn't get that right, because you're going to have to assimilate a new skill set to do this. And it won't be common knowledge to your current team of how to do these processes. I don't know how Wasim sees that, but that's what we see at our end, is that multi-stakeholder necessity, strategy, creative, copywriting, design, web development, web analytics, social community management, email marketing management, account management, project management, proofreading. All of these are necessary skills within setting this up.
Before Wasim's comment, just another question, Mike. So in both of your examples, you're not digitally selling per se. The digital element, as you said, is enabling more information, is capturing more information that then are moved to the salespeople, and the salespeople will use them in a kind of standard sales process, isn't it?
Correct. So this is, I think we use lots of different names, right? Digital marketing, omnichannel thing. Essentially, your sales team will always be at the center of this. People face-to-face is always a great meeting. And it's about empowering them with better knowledge and a better platform to sell from. A cold call is not as good as a warm call. And this enables you to get information to the prospect in advance of that. And I think the information that then comes back enables you to better inform those campaigns so that you can maybe reach people who you weren't reaching a year ago because you've got more intelligence to do that. And I think my general thinking about marketing is that it's business intelligence. And I think what Omnichannel as a strategy enables you to do is collect the data to become more intelligent. And that's what your marketing department should be as a function within your organization, is holding that intelligence, interrogating it, drawing insights from it, and then offering that out to your sales team and offering it out to the marketing strategists to better align your sales and marketing team to have better conversations, either online or in person, with your prospects.
Okay, Wasim, what first of all, what is your comment here? And second, if you can, let's say, add to your comments, what is your ideal strategy to make sure that, as Michael said, and this is what I think is scaring most of the people. First of all, this is not a 1-month process. This is a 2 or 3 years process. Second, it's not that because this is happening to me as well. In some of the cases, they come to me thinking that we are the Wizard of Oz and we're changing everything in 1 month. So what is the silver bullet? And the silver bullet does not exist. It's the set of information that you're receiving that is changing your intelligence, improving your intelligence. So how do you manage that?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of what Michael's saying rings true, right? So when you're looking at an overall digital transformation, it is definitely a 2 to 3 year process if you are a bigger company. The things that I think often get missed are what I call just the standard blocking and tackling, right? So in football, you're going to score a goal once every 90 minutes, right? But the other 88 minutes really matter, right? You got to defend, you got to do all those things. So I think being able to actually look at your platforms, understand and measure what matters there, right? What is the customer telling us? Where are these things sitting? What does that mean for us? Because that, I think, teams are not asking enough. Why do you care about the website visitors, right? I think Michael said total addressable market, right? I would push that further and say total relevant market, because that total addressable market is massive. But those people that are ready to go, that's your total relevant market. And what are you doing with that? How are you acting with that? How did that aperture open and close, right? I think where the practitioner is in a much tougher spot right now is the fact that a lot of the traffic, a lot of the signals are actually not human to human anymore. They're machine to machine, and understanding what's human, what's machine, where do we get started, where do we make endpoints, where can we make impact is a huge thing, right? And that's where it's like learning from the customer. If you're a bigger company or if you already have products that are selling, I'll make you a bet the 40% of the traffic that you're getting on the site is existing customers with product and service related inquiries. We've done this with hundreds of sites, and it's almost always that golden 30 to 40%, right? So what are you doing with that? Because everyone is looking at the website as a selling mechanism. We should also be looking at that website as a self-service mechanism. We should be looking at LinkedIn as a signal mechanism, a trust and verify mechanism, right? So there's a lot going on there. And when you dig into, I'm not even called the digital experience because the in-person is still where things are closed, but the digital is the other 85, 90%. So to say digital marketing or digital, it's just the experience. It's the sales experience. It's the marketing experience. It's the customer experience, right? How are you really looking at it? And are you starting to understand where the breakdowns are? Because what ends up happening, let's take Michael's use case with that campaign. If you don't have that customer service team lined up, if you don't have the billing team lined up, if you don't have the finance team lined up, and if you're not measuring where those endpoints happen, marketers tend to look at it and say, okay, I generated X went into Salesforce, Y came out. All right, but where were all those drop-offs in the way? Where did you leave insights on the table, money on the table, area on the table? I'll give you a great example here. There is so many millions of dollars spent on advertisement, on trade shows. There is maybe 1/100th of that spent on post experience. How quickly are you responding back? Is it relevant? Are you measuring? Are you learning? Are you converting there? And why or why not, right? I think that's a really important question that people don't ask. Why did this work or why didn't this work for that particular individual? And what's that feedback that they told you, right? That's going to be your superpower. I don't think I'm particularly smart. I'm just reading what the customer or the prospect is saying and then incorporating that into that next pivot point, right? And when we talk about ROI, it's not all about, attributable dollars, right? You could be looking at transformational. You could be looking at efficiency based, right? So if you think about it, your salesperson is getting called on X, Y, and Z. Okay, if you have an efficiency-based digital experience, now they have more time to sell. Now your customer experience team has more time to deliver higher quality output. Your finance team has less time trying to figure out what's real and what's fake on that pipeline, right? So all of those kind of come together. And what I would look for is, where is it in my business? What platform, what area can I learn? And then can I build that business use case? Because I think every single person sitting in a healthcare org is having to do more with less. And so how can I do more with less and prove to it, right? And the beauty of when we talk about this stuff is it is real time. So you're getting the feedback back in real time. You're learning in real time. And you can show that value, right? So if you think about it and you say, okay, and I'm just giving a couple of examples that are very different, but just to kind of get that idea. We're averaging 1,000 calls on our call center around this product. If I can take out 300 of those calls, 400 of those calls with a self-service mechanism, there's a dollar value or there's a euro value attached to that now I've saved that I can reinvest back into the company. So that's not a cost driver, that's a value driver, right? Same thing goes with sales enablement or automations. If I can show that I am driving the efficacy, that I'm driving a standard deal takes 120 days to close, but now I'm running this and we've cut it in half, right? Or there's this redheaded stepchild that we haven't been selling, but look at all of the site search, look at all of the chat endpoints, look at all of this. People are looking for it. How can we build this with e-com, or how can we get it, quickly done? You can start to really put points on the board. And that's been my experience, is like, let me take what you have. Let's see what you have under the hood. Let's look at what you're measuring. Let's figure out, is this the right thing to measure? What, is it set up correctly? Are we looking at all of these endpoints? What's real, what isn't? And then how do we, from that point forward, optimize around that and start to put points on the board for you to break the inertia and to break the silos?
Wazim, great points. I have one question, because for most of the people, digital marketing is pushing content.
Mm-hmm.
Pushing content on LinkedIn or on YouTube, or
Mm-hmm.
instead, in your conversation, you're stressing a lot the element of receiving the information.
Mm-hmm.
Can you help us understand how you receive the information, then to link what Mike was saying, to make the salesperson more intelligent?
Yeah, I mean, so for instance, I'm a high believer in open text feedback, whether that's through online chat, whether that's through AI chat, whether that's through your call center, your service centers, whether that's through things like your site search, right? Or, this is going to sound people are going to look at this and say, oh, well, this is like, are you serious? But yeah, a lot of people are actually talking about MedTech, health tech, biotech on places like Reddit, right? So even reading the forums, you can understand where the pain points are and where the failures are, right? And so starting to kind of break it down and understand, like, look, I don't have all the answers, but LVO's come to my site 14 times, and here's all the feedback he's delivered, and there's 5,000 LVOs there. So probably if we fix this, the CFO is going to be really happy, because now LVO is not bothering us. LVO is not a retention risk. LVO is expanding there, right? And we're able to actually funnel that into an account-based strategy for sales, right? Because if you look at it and you say to yourself, okay, this account is either really engaging or not engaging at all, how are those growth metrics or attrition metrics related? You can start to really see a trend, right? I do think like one of the core pieces is not doing this as a solo intrapreneur or entrepreneur when you're doing this. It's actually looping in all the teams on why that matters, right? It's getting sales excited. It's getting finance excited. It's getting operations excited. It's getting marketing excited, right? And it's realizing one key thing, which I think gets missed all the time, is it is a 365 experience, meaning it doesn't shut down, right? Too many times we're thinking about it from a launch perspective, from a campaign perspective, from a trade show perspective. And those are finite before, during, and after. When you're looking at this, it is a consistent 24/7, right? And that's a very different mindset to take.
There is here a very interesting question from Andrew, and he's saying, "Great discussion, guys. I'm interested in the importance of the data, capturing it and using it. Also, long-term, realizing its value and continue refining, updating it, and extracting its value." Do you think this is part of what you were saying
It
already?
is, and it's getting a lot
adding.
more difficult, right? Because you have, I mean, Michael's points were spot on. Now add the element that with GDPR, you're tending to lose 45% because you got to double opt-in in a lot of European places, right? So you're going off of directional data there. So you have to really understand that whole end-to-end and make some assumptions there. Additionally, you're having AI crawlers hit all these different sites and read all the different emails. So you can't just take things at face value. You have to model that in and really look for it, right? So we've helped a lot of clients look at, okay, what's real, what isn't, what matters to you, and how do we measure and get to it, and then maintain it and build on top of it. Because again, going back to that 365, I think there's a big need to get out of your head this idea of set it and forget it. set it and forget it mindset is done. It will never come back. And so, marketers or leaders have to really take on very much a hungry and humble approach, because these things are moving and people's preferences and behaviors are moving. So Andrew, if you're looking at things on the site, but you also have a call center that's generating a lot and those aren't tied in, you're leaving a lot on the table, right? For instance.
I think there are people who are sat probably on this call, hopefully, who sit in boardrooms. And I think data is a very powerful stakeholder to bring to the table in a boardroom, because it's kind of hard to argue with some of the insights, but you also have to know what insights you're looking for. And you're only going to get as good a data as the number of visitors to your site. And to do that, you're going to need to have analytics set up to work it out. I'm sure that you guys get the same question I do. I often get people saying, I think I need a new website. My first question to them is, how many people were on your website last month? And they often say, I don't know. And usually, as I think Wazim said, it's 80% of the people are often the sales team who are on the website downloading the picture of the logo. That happens. But having a website without any activity driving people to it is like putting a theme park on an island and constructing no transport to and from it. It's like making Disneyland and forgetting to put the train and the boats and the monorail on. So you have to have content which people want to go and see. And the more people that want to see it, the more data we generate. And the more data we generate, the better the insights we can find from that. But content is only going to be informed by your creative strategy and by your knowledge of what your ideal customer wants to hear about. And that's where I think it's important for people on this call probably to understand data is a beautiful endpoint to get to. There's quite a lot of steps before you get there. You start with your creative, then you work on your content. You need to have something to say that's interesting. And then after that, when we've got traffic, we can start ascertaining these data points. And that's when we get clever. And that's why I see omnichannel not necessarily as a destination to the journey, right? It's one of many strategies that we can pick, but it is one that gives us back a lot of very useful information. And if that information gets used in the boardroom, then when we talk about ROI, better decision-making, better informed decision-making is worth a lot more than numbers on paper, because it may influence a lot more about your ability to generate revenue as a company than what anecdotal feedback from the sales force can give you.
Yeah, adding to that, I think when Michael hit the nail on the head when he's talking about the content, I would add to that also the intents on the site, right? And so that's going to be a key piece of it. Who's using the site? Why are they using it? What are the intent paths? Can we define those intent paths? Can we measure those intent paths? And can we learn from those intent paths? And are there new intent paths that we haven't even thought through that we're seeing in the data, right? And I think, Andrew, that's a really important piece, right? Like, where are you measuring all the different intent paths? Have you built content for it? Is that content interactive to the point that the person can say, yes, this fulfills my need, or no, I was looking for this and you delivered this, right? Which then forces the copywriters and the marketers to really think through their messaging, right? And are there new intents that are popping up that we aren't thinking through, right? Because if you are getting a lot of internal traffic, you also want to filter that out. You don't want that in any of your data. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, no. That's very, very clear. I would like to open we are in the last 10 minutes, so I would like to open the stage to questions from the audience. But while they're typing in, I would like to ask you one final question, because generally we are saying that all great truth begin with as a blasphemy. Do you think that this somehow applies to our case, so that this tool is so powerful that right now it's so powerful that we don't even know how to manage it? It's like a supercar. When you sit in, you're a little bit confused of all the tools that you can have and manage.
Tech stack fear, right? I mean, the amount of platforms out there will confuse anyone at the minute, and they all tell you they've got the magic bullet. Look, I don't want to put this succinctly. I think the power of AI at the moment we don't fully understand, but what I do know is its ability to analyze mass data sets and come up with insights is better than any human team that I've ever, experienced working with. And it's going to enable us to do very clever things such as registries for healthcare and analyzing global data. That's going to be incredible. But I think more simply, it's going to be great at telling you as an organization what sales and marketing activities don't work quite quickly. And if you haven't got that in place, you don't have access to that data. And you're not going to be able to set that up within a week and have all this data coming through to you, because you need to refine your data points and pick the get the data that you need to formulate the insights that you need into your sales and marketing teams. And many people on this call will have a CRM set up. I find it hard to believe most wouldn't in the modern times. They'll all complain their salespeople don't use it. But within that CRM, there are amazing data sets that can be utilized just from the sales force alone. When you feed the marketing into it, and you have a clever tech stack that can analyze marketing and sales data and utilize AI, then you can come up with some seriously smart stuff. And Elvia, where I see it is, all I ever think about is, who is that ideal customer profile that we're looking for? And these are really important things, because in every other industry, ICP is very well known. I haven't really heard it talked about that much within R1, but I think the better refined you have that person, the age bracket, the specialty, the history, where they spend their time, what they want to hear, the journey that they want to be taken on. And if you can find them and utilize whatever channels you have to do that, then you're going to be more successful as a business. 10 people stood in front of you, ready to buy your products, better than 100 who you don't know. And that's what you should be using your data to feed towards, is refinement on a monthly, weekly, daily basis of that ICP, to say, we're not worried about that doctor or those surgeons. They never buy our products. They go through all the sales process. They never want to do it. They don't have the problem that we solve. These ones do. And this is where they're located. Let's go after them.
Wow, guys, you're giving such a great different perspective to the overall story. That is, it's amazing. Thank you. It's really inspiring. We have a question from Federica, and then I know, Wasim, I was sure you had to add a little piece.
Just 20 seconds.
Yeah, go ahead.
Which is, I wouldn't let the technology ever intimidate you. Start with what you have, build on top of that. And Michael's talking about AI. AI also comes with human bias in it, right? And so, you can graduate to these elements when you get there, but there's a lot you can do before. I like to consider myself even like a reform marketer, because, before I was passionate about different things and different platforms. Now it's like, okay, what do you have? Let's start with that. Let's build with that, right? The breaking the inertia doesn't have to. I think this is a common thing that happens in MedTech, is like, we need to do X, Y, and Z. So before we have X, Y, and Z, we can't do anything. It's like, no. If you have a customer, you should be starting, right? If you have two customers, you should be starting, because to Elvio, to your initial question, is like, is it a fantasy? No, it's not a fantasy, but it's an ethos and a metabolism that gets built into the org. In order to do that, you need to break the silos and break that inertia. So,
okay, Federica's question is, what's the minimum viable version of Omnichannel in a market that is still primarily relationship driven, like ours?
Well, I mean, Omnichannel could be as basic as your sales force feeding into your marketing team to say, these people want to come to an event, and you then emailing them the event details, right? It's about utilization of different channels in harmony to take your customer down the end journey to a call to action. I think people think of it as like a HubSpot, a vision, right? Where things are working while you're sleeping, and you wake up in the morning and you've got 30 leads. It's just about signals and triggers that trigger activity on a different channel to another one. And then the channels work in harmony. So that could be your sales channel going to see your prospect after they've received the email and registered for the course, and taking in some details about the course, about how you're going to transport them there. That's as simple as omnichannel gets. And I think sometimes we're sort of confusing this sort of end destination. That's how simple it could be.
So you're saying basically the minimum viable person is nothing, is just one step more than what we're doing right now.
One channel triggering activity on another channel and then working in harmony for a better result is where it is. And I think why omnichannels become so talked about is because sales and marketing are often detached in healthcare. And what sales complain about is we didn't get any leads or they're terrible. And what marketing complain about is they don't respect any of the activity we do or engage with it. And I think omnichannel really is the word which says, can you have better sales and marketing alignment, please? Because, we can work in harmony here. That's my feeling towards it.
Yeah, I think it's measuring
what do you think? Yeah.
I think it first starts with measuring what matters and what channels are you on, right? So, Frederica, I mean, if you are going to a trade show, that's a great example, right? If you're a smaller company and you're going to a trade show and you don't want to put a landing page, you want to do that, do you have a LinkedIn outreach strategy to the people that are coming to your booth? What's your digital presence on it? What are your goals and your actions coming out of it, right? Put yourself in that position. I think a lot of times there's just so much money spent on a campaign or spent on a trade show, but the follow-up doesn't match the dollars spent, because you wait a week, you wait a few days, whatever, and what ends up happening is what we call decay, right? That decay is a real thing. If you can build the messaging, you can build the follow-ups, and you can build those actions to come right after, that's an omni-channel win, because you're either measuring, did we go to that trade show and were they the right people that came to our booth? Was it the right action? Because there's nothing that's sitting in between. They didn't have time to forget about your message, right? So.
Excellent. Guys, I think we are at the end. Clearly, it was impossible to finish the full topic. The full topic is so big and so interesting that it would deserve hours and hours. So how can attendees, both live attendees and future attendees, can follow up with you guys? Mike, how they can find you?
Follow me on LinkedIn. I've got a fairly unique name, so I'm quite easy to find. And then on there, you'll see we do podcasts most weeks, speaking with people about similar topics. We've also got a white paper coming out about modernizing the commercial process within healthcare with Marco Baguini, who I think you've had previously on this channel. Marco was the digital transformation director at Zimmer Biomet. So when we're talking about large scale projects, Marco was right in the middle of one. So if anyone wants that, then please just direct message me on LinkedIn and we'll give you an advanced copy of the paper. There's a privileged audience, right? You get an advanced copy of it.
And Wazim, how about yourself?
Yeah, I would say LinkedIn is probably the perfect follow-up. Just, /in/Kawaf, that's me, KWAF. Happy to connect there, and always happy to kind of pay it forward. If you're ever bored in the car, there's a lot of podcasts I've been in. You can feel free to get your fill of omnichannel until you're fully satiated. So,
yeah, the self-serve that you were mentioning before.
Yep. So the voice lives on long after the call. That's the whole point.
That's clear.
Working while you're asleep, right?
Exactly.
Wazim, Mike, thanks a lot. Thanks for your time. It was really, as I said, inspiring, very interesting, but also inspiring. I think we are in the middle of a huge revolution for our industry. I appreciate it's maybe complicated. I agree with you. We shouldn't be terrified, but clearly sometimes could be daunting a little bit, seeing all these technology. Then everything is multiplied by artificial intelligence. But I think we really have the possibility of transforming the industry that that has gone in a certain way for decades. Thanks also to all the audience for who participated here. And I remind that this is a LinkedIn Live, so you don't need credential, you don't need anything. For who wants to replay, rewatch the live, it's very easy. You just tap on the event, and that's it. As simple as that. Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening. Thanks, Mike and Wasim. See you soon.